Hi, Drew from Mission RV Services. So today we are going to be changing out the electric element in a water heater. So today it's going to be an Atwood Dometic water heater. We're going to be showing you how to change the water heater electric element on. This is the 120 volt element that will heat your water up in your RV hot water heater or water heater. It's heating the water too hot. It's cold when it goes in. Atwood Dometic water heaters are not my favorite. I'll readily admit that. I'm sure the engineers, when they designed them, had a reason they put it in the back, but from a technician perspective, it makes it a little more difficult to change out. Suburban water heaters, they put their electric elements right in the front. Makes it, pretty easy to change out. A great DIY project for you if you happen to have a water heater go out. But there are a few checks we want to do to make sure that your element is actually bad. One is we check, do we have 110 volts at the water heater element? Do we have good continuity on the element? So there's things we check to make sure, is this bad, or do we have a power problem? And then we go ahead and we validate that the water heater element is bad. So a few steps that you're going to do before you change your element out is one, before you do the actual change, you want to make sure you have a water heater element removal tool. So this is very important. There's not a lot to grab onto when you're changing these, and the removal tools are made to where they're very flat, so they fit right on there. Don't mind the noise in the background. I apologize for that. It's weed whacking day here at the old campground, and but it shouldn't matter too much once we get under this coach. So we're working on our Class A motor coach, and the access is under the coach on this one. Some of them are inside cabinets inside of your rig, but on this particular Atwood Dometic water heater, it is going to be under the coach, and there's an access panel we'll remove. First thing we're going to do though is we're going to get pressure off of the tank, and we're going to drain all the water out, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so to do the element swap, you're going to need a few tools. One is you'll need a Phillips head screwdriver, and that is to remove the positive and negative wire off of your heater element once you get in there. You're going to need a meter, and the meter is to check a couple things. One, something we've already done, we've already checked to make sure we had valid power to our current element that's in there. And the reason I'm showing you the element out here is just because where the water heater is in the rig that we're going to be working on, it's very tight, and I don't think I can get a good shot of this for you. So we're going to show you this new one, and I'll show you a couple checks we do on it. And you're going to need your meter. You're going to be checking for your power. You're also going to be checking for resistance across this. So we're going to be looking for about 10.2 ohms of resistance to tell us if the element is good. So the one that's on there currently, we have 120 volts to it. This is a 120 volt water heater element. This is what they use in RVs. Generally in homes you'll see 240 volt. So, but most of the time in every RV I've worked on is 120 volt, usually 1500 watts, 120 volts. You're going to need a removal tool. So the reason we use this removal tool is when you look at what you have to bite onto here, it's very, very shallow. So if you use, and we'll show you an example of a socket, if you use a socket, you've got a ridge in most all sockets already. So I don't know if you can tell, but that ridge, so that takes up half of this. So if you use a standard socket, you might get one shot to get this off there, and if you strip that, well, game over. You're gonna have to, it's gonna be a challenge to get that off of there. So for a few bucks, you can get one of these water heater removal tools. It has two different sizes, but it's completely flat here on the end. And so when you're putting it on, you're getting a full bite on the edge of this water heater element. So you definitely want this. And then let's do this. So one of the things we're going to do here, just to show you what we're checking for. So I won't be able to show you the power, but you would put it on your volts, and you'd be checking AC voltage, and you would just, when it's wired up, and again, if you don't feel comfortable doing this while you have power, you know, go to the rvtaa.org, find a certified tech, but you would just put your meter across your two posts here, and you'd be looking for your voltage. Obviously, we're not going to get any voltage because this is on a bench. But the other check you're going to do, so say I get on there, I've got good voltage, I got my 120 volts, so I'm going to switch it to check resistance. I'm looking for that tone, but we're going to put this on here, and obviously that's more than I need, but I have 10.1 ohms of resistance. Now that's on the screw heads. If I actually put it on to the metal plating of the element here, let's see if we can get that on here while I'm holding the meter. It's a little bit difficult, but if I actually put it onto that metal plate, I bet I get 10.2, but let's see. There we go, 10.2, 10.1, so, but we want to see right around maybe 9.8 to 10.2, which this is brand new, so I would have expected that. Now the one we have in the camper right now, that one is reading 0. There is no resistance anymore, and the owner did state that we had a recent freeze here in Texas, and when they drained the water heater, as they should, but they forgot to turn the element off. So, and then they realized their mistake after about a half hour. By then it was too late. These cannot operate without water. They'll work for maybe a minute or so, but they will burn up. They'll turn cherry red. I always tell customers, you know, for a good visual, think of Home Alone when Kevin puts the element on the doorknob to get the bad guy. And that's basically what he's using as a type of a heating element. And these need to be submersed in water to do their job. If they're not, they just pop and break. And once we get the other one out of there, we'll show you a picture of it. But we're going to get to work. I'm going to pull that other one out, and I'll see if I can get some shots of best I can to show you what we're doing. So again, so if this was a Suburban water heater, you know, we'll show you a picture of the Suburban versus the Atwood, we would be able to pull this element from the front. But on this motor coach, what is nice, I guess, is that under the coach there is this access panel here, and try to get a better shot of that. There we go. So once we take this panel off, then that'll expose the back of the water heater, and then we'll have a cover that's over the element. And so we've already checked this before, but we needed to get the proper element for it, which really they're very standard. You can find them at, like, you know, your home improvement stores, 120 volt. They may not be 1500 watt. They might be 1440 watt, and they'll be a little bit shorter, but they will do the job in a pinch. But we're going to remove this cover again, and then we'll show you what we have we're working with inside there. Okay, so here is our water heater. Here, and see if we can get, there's where your cold water or your water source goes in. Then up here is where the hot water comes out at the top. It goes through a check valve, a one-way check valve there, and then that supplies water to the rest of the coach. And the box right here is, behind that is our 120 volt water heating element. So this allows you to run this as a dual source system. And so it can either run on 12 volt and propane or 120 volt water heat, but you still need 12 volts in your system. And the reason why is, always remember, we've talked about this before, that 12 volt is the brains of the operation. So that is what tells the water heater or this element to either turn on or turn off based on the temperature settings from the manufacturer. So we're going to pop this cover off right now, and then we'll expose that water heating element, and we'll show you a little bit more. So as you can see, we're not going to get a lot of room at this. So I knew that the other day when I initially checked this system and had to put a meter to this and check it out. But you know, we have maybe about 10 inches in between here, but we do have a little depth past that cover. So the next thing we're going to do, we've already turned our circuit breaker off and removed power from this. We don't want to take this apart without removing power. We're going to loosen the two screws up there, remove the black, which is the hot wire, and the white, which is the common ground wire. You'll also see a ground hooked to that tank that grounds this tank to the system. So, and that's what gets everything running and keeps that water hot for you, so you don't have to use all your propane up. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull this out of there, and so we're going to get those wires off, and then I'll show you how that tool sits on there. Okay, so now we are going to put our element removal tool on here. So you'll notice that it's just a small hole in there, and to get leverage you have to use a screwdriver or something you have to put through there. Sometimes they come with a little tool you can use, but I just use a Phillips head screwdriver. I am going to just wanted to show you how that seats on there, but it is important you keep this straight and you give it even amount of turning force, because you don't want to twist this off and strip the head of that water element. So let's get to work and take this off. Okay, so now I've broken it loose. So once it's broken loose, it generally turns relatively easy. Now, this is a very low spot in this tank, so we might get a little residual water out of here. It's still kind of a cold day, so not the best day for a bath outside, but again, it's tough to get in here and really show you, but let's see if we can get you there. There we go. And we'll get this out of there. Again, there goes our water. And then, look at that. So that is what happens when you run this without water in it. So, yeah, not a good time. But the good thing is that by doing a continuity test on here, this is why we have zero continuity, because, yeah, that thing is broken half. So we're going to get that new element put in, and we're going to get these customers back in shape, and we'll go through that procedure as soon as we get this hooked back up. Okay, so now we have the new element installed. The black and white wires are reinstalled. So you may be saying, hey Drew, how do I know that I have my white and my black, my ground and my positive on the right side? It doesn't say positive or negative on the element, and you're correct. But the goal is that you just need one of each of those wires on one side or the other. It's going to work the same way. Generally, I just try to say, okay, you know, my black wire was on the right, my white was on the left. That's how I hooked them back up. But from an element standpoint, the goal is that the power continuously goes through it, not that you're focused on that, but that is a good question. And if it had a positive and a negative listed on the water heating element, then by all means, you follow that guideline based on whoever manufactured that element. But in this case, this particular element does not have a positive or a negative listed. It just needs to be connected positive and negative on one on each side. Okay, so we got our element back in, and now what we're going to do is we're going to put our plastic cap back in. Atwood Dometic water heaters use a nylon type plastic cap, and these are actually a safety device. They don't require any type of a sealant on them, so you don't need tape on these, but they're an extra safety device. So you have the safety device of your pop valve here, of your so if it gets too hot, this obviously lets go and lets the water release. But this is another secondary device, this nylon cap here. And so you should never put a steel cap into a aluminum water tank, which is what this is. No anode rod goes in here because it is an aluminum tank. So where you would use an anode rod is in a Suburban water heater, which uses a steel tank. So this one doesn't. So what we're going to do, we're going to tighten this up, and we're going to go ahead and start filling it with water, and we'll be ready to turn this back on and get this customer some hot water on electric again. Okay, we have our water turned back on, and what we're waiting for here is once this tank fills, it's a 10-gallon tank. So this is how I do it, because we're trying to keep a water pocket in there, and I want to know when this tank is filled. So when the tank fills up to a point to where I get a little bit of water dripping out of here, then I'll flip this down, and then I'll continue the process of getting the air out of the lines before I energize this tank by putting either propane to it, which goes through this burner tube, or electricity, or with the electric water heating element. But I want to get all the air out of the system before I start heating this tank up. That's my preference, and that's how I do it, and I've had good success with that. And the reason is I just want to make sure I don't have a big air pocket in there somewhere, and there's an opportunity for that element to, go bad again. So that's why I do it that way. But now we're just gonna sit here, and we're gonna just wait a minute until this fills up and we get our water dripping through that. There we go. So now we'll do the same in the faucet. We'll get all the air out of the lines, and then we'll be ready to energize this tank. All right, so that's kind of the basic review on how to change a water heater element in an Atwood Dometic. Again, those are in the back of the tank. At least all the ones I've ever worked on, they're always in the back of the tank. I'm sure there was an engineering decision behind it. If you're working on a Suburban water heater, those are going to be in the front, and there'll be a little oval cover towards the bottom of the tank. There's about 3 screws you take off to access that element on a Suburban, and but really the steps are the same. One's in the front, one's in the back. I'd rather work on Suburban water heaters all day long when it comes to changing elements, just because they're in the front. Generally, we end up in a cabinet, and worst case scenario, we have to remove the whole tank just to change a water heater element. We hope it helps you. If it did, make sure you click that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave us a comment if you have any questions below, and we'll do our best to answer. But until next time, this has been Drew with Mission RV Services. Bye, everybody.